In this video, we are going to implement the edit API so that we can update our address, and as well as delete so that we can delete one of the addresses here. And finally, we're going to implement the set as default API. Let's go and do that. And go to your editor, and you want to go to address.js under routes, and right below here you want to type router.put and then addresses, and then the parameter, which is the address ID, and then async request, and make sure you add the verify token. And then here you want to do try and catch, and in here you want to do let found address await, and then address find one, and then we're gonna pass in the ID, which is request.params.id, and then if found address, and then here we want to check the requested body, is it empty or not. So let's go up, let's find this, copy this thing, and we want to put it here. And for user, we want to delete because it's always be owned by the same user. So we want to check if request.body.country, or you can just copy this and then just add if like this. Same thing for this, request.body street address, paste it here. If request.body.city, and then if request.body.state, then if request.body.zip code, and if request.body.phone number, and here if request.body.deliver instructions, and last but not least is if request.body.security code. And then we want to do await found address dot safe. And one thing you need to change is you want to copy this and paste it in here, change all of this to found address, and then finally we want to response with success true, and then a message that will say successfully updated the address. And then finally you want to copy this status and paste it in here. And after that we want to implement the delete. So router.delete, it will be the same addresses. So let's go up and make sure we write the same like this. Okay, correct. And then ID, and then verify token, async request and response, and in here we want to try and catch, and we want to do let deleted address equals to await address dot remove, and then we're passing the user ID, which would be user request dot decoded dot underscore ID. But if we just send the request.decoded ID, then it will remove all of the address belongs to this user. So we want to add another ID, which will be the ID of the address, request.params.id. So it will check in the database that, you know what, remove only one document that belongs to this specific user ID, and as well as the address ID. And finally, we want to do if deleted address, and then you want to response success true, and then finally message address has been deleted. And in here you want to copy this rest status and paste it in here. And the final API that we want to do is we want to type router.put addresses, and then set default, and then verify token. This is the API where as a user you can set whichever address you want to be your default address. So and then we have to pass in async request and response, and here try and catch, and then const doc equals to await user dot find one and update, because we're not gonna check all of the requests at body, so I think using this is ideal. And then ID request dot decoded dot underscore ID, And then we want to set that address field in the users, which will be request.body.id. So the logic of find one and update is first find that specific user that has this ID, and then after that you want to set the address ID that we got from the client and set it in the address field. Simple as that. And then we check if doc, we simply want to response success will be true, and then message successfully set this address as default. And you want to copy this and paste it here, and we just want to add a note above this API, all this API, so that in the future if you want to hire like developer, they will understand that this is what API. So this is post API create an address. Copy this and paste it here. Get API, get all addresses, and then here will be get API, get list of countries, and here will be put API, update an address. In here will be delete an address, and finally here will be put, and this will be cell default. So let's go through the API one by one. So let's go to the put API first. So in here we are doing address.find1, the operation where you want to find that specific address. By supplying an ID of that address, then only you will find the address. And then we want to check if the address existed, then we want to check the body. Imagine if the user put like nothing inside, then most likely it will go to this part, because if it's undefined, then when you try to save it, it will spit an error. So we want to check the body, if is it empty or not. If it's empty, then we don't want to do anything. If it's not empty, then simply set it to the corresponding field, like country, full name, street address, city, and so on. And then you want to save that address, and then you want to response success true and the message. And the next API is delete API. But the question here is, why do we not follow the same technique, which is passing the ID of the address alone? So for delete, we are doing a little bit different way of deleting. We can always delete this if you want, and we can follow exactly like a put, or we can add user in find one for extra validation. Like we want to make sure that the ID of address belongs to this specific user ID. But for remove, we want to add that extra cautious, just in case if, let's say, the ID of this address does not belong to this user. So we want to add extra cautious. So if you want to do extra cautious for your update, you can add this as well. We can make it the same so that you won't get confused. If you were to choose which one is better, I prefer this way, where you add the user and as well as the ID of the address to update. And for delete, and then you check if deleted address, and then simply you want to respond success true, message address has been deleted. And for the final put API, which is set default, is that we are finding this user by supplying the ID of the user that we got from the token. And then after we found that user, we want to set the user's address to the address ID we got from the front end. That's how we set the default address. And then we check if document, and actually we can change this to updated address user, and then change to here. If updated address user, then we want to respond with success true, and then same thing, the message. So that will be the logic for each of these API, because we have wrote this very similar API before and many times. So I'm hoping that by now you are super comfortable writing your own API in the future, because you already know how to create, how to read, how to update, and how to delete. So I'll see you guys in the next video, where we're going to call all these APIs on the front end.